Well, hello, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for inviting me to this relevant seminar on the Global South and the 70th anniversary of Bandung. What I would like to talk today is uh, first a quick reflection on the historical evolution of the Global South when since the moment the thunder of Bandung took place, and then to discuss its possible role in the present scenario with an emerging and increasingly complex world order. Just to go to the origins quickly, let me begin in the 50s, at that time when what we call the Global South was known as the Third World, a term coined in 1952 by Alfred Sobey. The Third World at that moment was a group of new decolonized states together with colonies aspiring independence from Africa and Asia, emerging after the Second World War and after the decline of the European metropolis or empires. This group of nations had strong leaders who emphasized solidarity, self determination, and non intervention. As a result, early forms of South South cooperation began to take shape. The Bandung Conference at that moment represented the awakening of the Afro Asian world and the assertion of a new collective force. Their incorporation into the United Nations signaled the recognition of their sovereign status and their demand for a voice in global affairs. The South, so was and is even now, is composed by a diverse set of countries, share vulnerabilities and challenges, but far from homogeneous. The differences, economic, political, socio-cultural, are real, but they all share the experience of colonial domination, and that colonial domination constituted a powerful bond among them. You know that the concept South has its own story. Initially, as you know, the South was what we call third world. In Latin America, also, we call it the periphery. During the Brand report in the 80s, it was called South because Brand introduced that famous Brand line that divide the North, the wealthy North, and the poorer South. And it was after the Cold War that the expression Global South took much more relevance and that the term gained real traction. Global South, the concept Global South, although it was coined or was used initially in 69 by an activist of US New Left that described the world marked by northern domination over a subordinated global south, the global south got much more hierarchical and conceptual use than third world after the 90s, and together with a group of scholars or thinkers aligned with post-colonial and decolonial thought, with critical perspectives and international relations, with diplomatic discourses from India, South Africa, Brazil. But it is interesting that in this new century, the global south took shape as a shared political and epistemic project, an identity constructed in contrast with the global north. In the meantime, or going along history, we can see that the global south has had periods of greater cooperation and periods of almost oblivion. This means that South-South cooperation expanded during periods in which the international system allowed greater autonomy. And despite the vertical dependencies with the North, countries of the South developed forms of horizontal cooperation, knowledge exchange, and joint political action. Nevertheless, the trajectory was not linear. And along the years, we can see that in the 60s and 70s, G77, non-aligned movement, its role in General Assembly, the creation of a new international economic order, the Charter of Economic Rights and Duties of States, were all good results of South-South cooperation. But in the 80s, together with the debt crisis, came the structural adjustment programs, the end of the Cold War, and the unipolar liberal movement, together with a shrinking role of the developmental states, to the extent that the South collective presence diminish or weaken in multilateral forums, and in certain ways the South became invisible uh, within what was the dominant global narrative. Now we are in the 21st century, and the landscape has been transformed globally because the new century brought significant surprises, and the international system is undergoing profound mutations, like a slow but clear shift of global power from west to east, the rise of China as a major global actor, the emergence of new regional powers seeking for a more influential role, a crisis of multilateralism, and a simultaneous proliferation of multilateral formats like G20, BRICS, IPSA, the Organization of Shanghai Cooperation, among others. So the present context invites us to ask, has the spirit of Bandung survived these transformations? Why? Because the global south today is more fragmented, more heterogeneous, and more unequal. Solidarity has its limits when confronted with different divergent national interests, and cooperation without financing becomes extremely difficult to sustain. Meanwhile, there are new global challenges like debt, trade asymmetries, economic volatility, security issues, environmental stresses, which affect all countries but impact in the South disproportionately. But we often say that we are all in the same boat, but the truth is that some boats are much more fragile than others. Just to close and to conclude, some reflections concerning what's the role of the global south in a world in polycrisis. Well, the present polycrisis offers the global south challenges and opportunities because many southern countries possess key resources for technological, environmental, and digital transitions that are shaping the 21st century. But transforming these resources into political influence requires innovative thinking, new forms of flexible, variable geometry coalitions, and a renewed strategic agency. The legacy of Bandung still matters, not as a nostalgic memory, but as a reminder of what collective action can achieve when countries of the South articulate their priorities and defend their autonomy. If the global South is to play a meaningful role in the emerging world order, it will need to combine pragmatism and ambition, preserving the spirit of solidarity, while adapting to an environment that is far, far more complex than the one imagined in 1950. Is the Bandung spirit still relevant today? Yes, but it needs renewal. The core normative commitments of Bandung, solidarity, equality, non interference, and development as a right, remain morally and politically compelling. Yet, the world that confronts us in 2025 is not that one of 1955. Climate breakdown, sovereign debt distress, digital techno nationalism, and a shifting distribution of power, which requires a Bandung Plus, a refreshed framework that rearticulates those foundational values for new realities. Thank you very much.